And now, in a very special keynote, Danai Gurira. She's an award-winning playwright and actor, a long-time gender activist, and a UN Women Goodwill Ambassador. And she's about to spend a lot more time with the Unstereotype Alliance. Here she is in conversation with our great ally, Madeline Di Nonno, from the Geena Davis Institute for Gender in Media.
Welcome. I want to acknowledge that I am currently on the traditional lands of the Chumash peoples. And although we are gathering in a virtual space, I want to recognize that we are all connected with one another and that the ground beneath my feet is historically the home of Indigenous peoples. Danai Gurira is an award-winning playwright and actor. Born in Iowa to Zimbabwean parents and raised in Zimbabwe, she is distinguished as the first African female writer to have a play on Broadway and to bring the perspectives of African women to mainstream theater. As an actor, Danai starred for 7 years as Michonne on the award-winning TV series The Walking Dead, and then as General Okoye in Marvel's 2018 Academy Award-winning blockbuster film, Black Panther. She brilliantly reprised her role in Avengers, Infinity War, and Avengers Endgame, which went on to become the #1 top-grossing film in history. In 2018, Danai was named a Goodwill Ambassador for UN Women, supporting its mandate of gender equality and women's rights and leveraging her celebrity as an amplifier of other women's voices. And this year, she will expand that role to work very closely with the Unstereotype Alliance. It is my honor to welcome Danai to the Unstereotype Alliance Global Member Summit. Hello.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's wonderful to have you here. So we're going to get to it because I know we don't have a lot of time. You have said, since I was a little girl, it was clear to me that women were equal in power and ability to men. You became a Goodwill Ambassador in 2018. Clearly, our world has changed dramatically since then. How has your experiences informed your role, which is now evolving to a new focus on dismantling stereotypes?
I'm very excited to announce that my new focus as the UN Women Goodwill Ambassador will be around dismantling gender norms and harmful stereotypes with the Unstereotype Alliance and our new campaign, Say Nothing, Change Nothing.
So what does dismantling stereotypes mean for you?
Well, dismantling stereotypes is definitely connected to pretty much everything I've ever tried to be a part of creatively. And that's because my creativity and my, I guess one would call it advocacy, have always been pretty much the same thing for me. I was born in the United States to African immigrant parents, and then we moved back to Zimbabwe when I was 5. So, I grew up in a nation that had just extricated itself from colonialism. And in 1980, it was one of the very last countries to gain its independence from British rule. And, there's a lot of stereotypes that go into, growing up as a Black African girl in the world, in either part of it, honestly. And so that weaved itself into where I garnered outrage and where I wanted to have some sort of effect or say something differently. So it definitely, the stereotypes that I witnessed growing up, when I came back to the United States, for instance, my first play was about the experience of African women and HIV, just giving one singular woman's story to unstereotype the idea that they're just a statistic and they're just like doing nothing in Africa and they're just all getting AIDS, and I was just hearing very disembodied concepts, dehumanizing concepts of what Africa was going through with HIV/AIDS. And I had grown up in a country heavily hit in the 80s and 90s. So I knew that wasn't true. So that stereotype in and of itself about Africans, about that particular issue, about African women, led me to create my first play. And it's just sort of always been that. I always want to tell a story that knocks a stereotype off its feet. That's always just been how I've navigated storytelling in what I've done as a creator and what I've done when I've been brought in as an actor.
And so can you talk a little bit more about the impact of some of your plays? And for everyone who may not be familiar, Danai is an award-winning, playwright. Can you talk a little bit about the impact that that has had?
The impact. Well, it's funny because as a writer, as a creator, as a playwright, you can't really measure or quantify or predict impact. All you can do is tell a story with seeking to be a worthy vessel of those who you are trying to give voice to. And really that is a process in and of itself. And then the effect that telling that story might have on the world, you just hope it has one. You hope that people are affected, that they think differently when they walk out of out of that theater. You hope that you've provoked a new, way of thinking, killed an old way of thinking. And that's really all, that's what you can hope for. We definitely did a lot of work trying to, like with Eclipsed on Broadway, speaking the names of girls who were still in a state of abduction from the Boko Haram. And we'd speak their names every night, 3 girls, and we'd have the audience repeat their names. So there was an awareness that there are really real young women out there who are going through torturous experiences for utterly no reason and who have great personhood and potential. So so that the next time they hear of these sort of stories or have an opportunity to contribute in any way, they're just doing it from a whole new perspective. So, that's a constant. I'm always trying to, with my play, The Convert, how can I bring the story of the African during colonization or the African girl into a whole new perspective? How do I make sure the audience not only sees it through the story, but are there resources available? And that is up to the audience to take up after that. So I can't prescribe the response. I can just try to affect them with, in my case, my tool is storytelling. Everyone has their own tool.
Which has been so powerful. And so you've used your voice, your art, as a platform for advocacy, but you've also used your advocacy as a pathway forward for others. And can you talk a little bit about why you created Love Our Girls?
Love Our Girls I created because I do honestly believe that there's something at the core of how women are treated in this world, and the absurd inequities and inequalities and gender-based violence and gender-based discrimination in every realm we can name, that something in that is related to a lack of love. Love to me says something about regard and respect. And I was born on Valentine's Day, so I wanted to transform. So ideally, the newsletter comes out on the 14th of every month, because it was my way during Eclipse to sort of let's repurpose this day around love for women and girls, and focusing on their struggles and how to diminish them and how to eradicate them. And that's through celebrating the work people are doing and bringing awareness to the issues that really require more of our attention and our advocacy and our awareness. And it's really that, it's an awareness hub, while it also brings, it also celebrates women and girls organizations across the world that are doing tremendous work. And if I can, amplify their platform, that's my goal. So it definitely is about that. It was created initially because of a young lady who, I was on a Walking Dead fan thing, and a young lady asked me how I garnered my confidence and how she didn't understand how to get there herself, and how there's a lot of us, she was saying, who look in the mirror and we're not happy with what we see. And it really broke my heart that that's such a struggle amongst a lot of women and girls that I know exists, and we've all been through in various ways. And I just wanted to create something that continue to answer that question. And I'm still trying to give that young lady a complete answer and a complete remedy.
And for all our members out there who want to know more about Love Our Girls, we will post a link to the URL in the session notes, so check it out. So Danai, you've been an ardent voice in the fight against racial injustice. Can you tell us about difficult conversations with my white friends?
Two things really. Firstly, that didn't, it turned out to be a one or two conversations, and I'll explain why. Really, it was a dear friend of mine who used to be my boss on The Walking Dead, Scott Gimple. He came to me and he was talking about, all the things he was realizing while during this time period of, when last summer, when the country was going through a racial reckoning, and that was also rooting itself in individuals going through their reckoning, and he was connecting with that for his own journey. And he said, I don't know, I'm not sure what to do. And I said, well, let's just converse about it, like a real conversation around race. And I realized when we did have the conversation how rarely I had it with my white friends. And I was shocked that him and I had not had it in the past, because we are very, very good friends, And I was really, really surprised at that for myself even. But I also did feel like, there was a moment throughout that was really real around folks not feeling like they could, like Black folk really being exhausted with being asked how I can fix things by white people, and really not wanting to take on that responsibility, and rightfully so. But I started to actually have a curiosity around having that conversation, probably rooted in the fact that I was in my undergraduate time, I was a social psychology major, and I used to focus on race, and I was always looking at how do you get it to a place where you pin it down and you can truly dismantle it, versus how I feel it kind of moves around too fast and people can reform it and repurpose, or say it's not really what it is, and gaslight it. And so it kind of keeps growing and moving in society and showing up wherever it chooses. So I've always had a very specific interest in how one can dismantle it, and seeking to, really. And so that's what that conversation with Scott really was for me, was a journey of how do I contribute to this moment in a way that's really, that really feels like something that I can do. And really, honestly, it was about how do I make sure that in this moment, white people are given the awareness around how whiteness works and how they have to do the work. And I think that's been a big thing that is absent with the issue of racism, is how do we address whiteness, and how do white people agree to do the work? Otherwise, it just doesn't go away.
So Danai, at the Institute, there's one of our tagline is, if she can see it, she can be it. And clearly your portrayal of General Okoye has had a tremendous impact on how we see, female characters represented, globally. Can you talk a little bit about the impact that you've seen from audiences that have watched you in that character?
Well, it's once again, I honestly, I struggle with like how I assess impact, but all I can say is that it's been really, really, it's been amazing to see the response to the how I think that movie as a whole unpacked a lot of stereotypes around Africans, around women, around Black people, and really addressed something that I think is very, very important, that I believe colonization stripped from Africa, which was who we would have been without it. And Wakanda really shows this amazing idea of what African ingenuity and freedom can create. And so there was so many ways that seemed to really empower people, because the stereotype of what Africa is in this very, very crude, ignorant, seemingly very acceptable way that often Africa is spoken of was something that you could see has impacted a lot of people of African descent and non-African descent in terms of how they see the continent. And so what I loved about the response to Black Panther as a whole was how so many people were able to find like a pride in their culture and their heritage that And there was many things that are very real about, you know, our portrayals that, you know, that can really be accessed from the way that real, you know, motifs of design from very particular, you know, ethnicities and people across the continent were utilized in the design of the movie. That won, you know, 2 Oscars for design of costume and set, both of which were deeply influenced by real Africa. So that's a beautiful breaking right there of the ideal of what, you know, beauty and aesthetic architecture or in you know, costume design looks like, or what gets rewarded. So right there was so much stereotype breakage. But in terms of Okoye as well, the women being the army, a woman being the head of the army, the woman being the head of intel and all of this, and being trusted as the right hand of the monarch without question or concern. It really brought, I think, to the fore this idea, like, why is there some idea why is that even different? You know what I mean? That should just be the norm, you know? And the premise that the country is the most technologically advanced in the world, and that's who guards and protects it, was something that, you know, you really did feel the impact across, you know, my interactions with people, or, you know, seeing young girls and women dressing up as the character or as the army. There was just a real, I could definitely feel an empowerment that was felt around a lot of women and girls that was very, to me, it was very touching, very much a gift to me, because that's, of course, something I've always had a passion for, just to eradicate, as you mentioned, since I was a girl, the notion of there being some sort of disparity in ability between the genders. And so that was definitely something very beautiful, seeing even young British white boys loving her, and, you know, an older businessman in Nigeria who saw me walking across the hotel lobby and called out "General," you know, in a context where, you know, that's kind of what the idea of an African woman general has resonated from a little British boy to a 60-year-old Nigerian businessman. That was cool. I mean, that was really cool to see the resonance, and I was thankful to be a part of that.
And you've played a lot of other iconic roles. And for those of us, including myself, who are big fans of The Walking Dead, you also played another phenomenal character for 7 years, Mushon, on The Walking Dead. And you were a katana wielding, you know, character. Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, I mean, once again, I loved her when I read about her, because I was like, you know, my whole mission as a playwright and as a creator of work had always been to, you know, to eradicate stereotype through what I was, you know, the characters I'd create, the idea that, oh, you know, Black African women can't be at the core of a narrative in, you know, mainstream American theater. So constantly I was like, let me prove that wrong. Let me prove, you know, so I was constantly creating narrative that lived in the heart of breaking a stereotype around these things. But I'd never come across a character like this. And I was like, oh, well, this is the breaking of stereotype I've never come across, or I've never thought of. I often said to Robert Kirkman, I wish I thought of her, you know. How did you think of her? Because, you know, she was just like a, you know, the Katana meets a Black girl with dreadlocks, you know, was just very, very interesting to me. And I loved how we got to craft her, definitely cracking through a lot of stereotype as she was built up, right through like what her backstory turned out to be, and you know, who ultimately her partner turned out to be. There was just a lot of cracking of stereotype as we got to navigate the role. You know, with my 2 showrunners, Angela Kang and Scott Gimple. So I really was able to experience, you know, playing a really full character, and thankfully those are very mindful storytellers. They're in charge of the story. They're very mindful storytellers about that, about really letting a character be a very intricate individual thing. So I really got to play a woman who evolved, who had many facets, who was really strong and was able to also show vulnerability, and be a lover, be a friend, be a warrior, be really scary, be, you know, be broken over and over again, but, you know, but still keep going and finding ways to, you know, keep joy alive and keep moving. So there was a lot that I got to do with her that I know is not common for Black women to get to do in television or in film. It's just, it's not common. And so I was very, very, I did deeply love playing her, and she had a lot of there are aspects of her that, you know, I mean, you know, right from learning a katana, you know, I was connecting deeply with, like, you know, some ancient Japanese traditions to really understand the source of that weaponry. And that was really cool. I've always loved Japan. So there's just aspects of what I got to do that I just don't think is very common for a Black girl to get to do. And that to me right there, and, you know, what is something that it speaks to the mandate of unstereotyping. And it just takes a few folks just willing to truly listen. You know, I think there are aspects of how you can actually just fall into stereotype because you assume that's what everyone wants and what everyone's used to. And then there are folks who are just like, no, I'm listening to this story and I'm listening to the authenticity of this person and of this and the organic journey of a character. And it's not that, it's something else. We're gonna go this way. And people thought it was so huge and radical that my character and the Rick Grimes character became a couple. And I guess it was. You know, I guess it was. But really, should it be? You know what I mean? Like, but once again, it was eradicating a stereotype around who the lead man, the handsome white male lead man, can be with. But it was clear that the characters had a connection and chemistry. So what do you listen to? You know, and thankfully, so that's why I said it just takes a few folks willing to truly listen. And I think right there, stereotypes can break.
So I want to build on the thread clearly what we've been talking about in terms of authenticity. And I want to go back to your work as Goodwill Ambassador. You've embedded all of your advocacy to dismantle harmful stereotypes. And can you tell us a little bit about the new upcoming campaign called Say Nothing, Change Nothing?
Yes, it's a very, very exciting initiative that I'm really happy to be a part of. Yes, Say Nothing, Change Nothing. It's about how do we unstereotype this world. Unstereotyping starts with you, and this really goes into how silence is really complicity, and how do we really affect change in a world that is riddled with stereotype, that's very harmful and can limit people's lives. You know, you can have the best intentions in the world, but unless we are actually saying something around these issues, nothing ends up changing. So this is how we are it's the core of the campaign is about mandating to ourselves as a society that we have a personal responsibility to, you know, as we've heard many times, be the change that we want to see. So we have to actually use our voices to unstereotype. And, you know, that is very, very much at the core of what we're looking to do. And I really think that there are aspects going on definitely with the younger generation that is very much in line with really undoing some things that we've just gotten really accustomed to, and really questioning them, turning them over and saying, what is this and why, which is so important. And it's really at the core of this campaign, which is basically, you know, the Unstereotype Alliance. And to, like, the idea that every single word that we speak can change the world that we're in. And it's really true. And, you know, there've been some strides made, you know, one can say there've been some strides made definitely since like the 50s or the 60s around how language is used. But we know what it is to not say certain words anymore. But there's a ways to go. And this is really around how we get into how we say what we do say, and how we say it, and what we challenge, and how that then can continue the struggle and the journey to live in a world where people are living in mutual respect and not in stereotyped restraint.
So speaking of challenges, and this is our kind of final question for today, You know, this is an audience of members of the Unstereotype Alliance. It is an audience of leading global content creators, media companies. Do we have a challenge for them? Is there a call to action in terms of, is there a stereotype that we would like to eradicate, you know, right now on this call?
Absolutely. I think that that's really a great idea. And really, you know, because we all know them, and we all know that there are stereotypes that restrain and restrict people in this world. I know it as a Black woman, you know, the stereotype that comes along with, you know, what you see when you see a Black woman, or what you assume, that right there is a stereotype. And it is one that can be very limiting to Black women across all realms, professionally, medically, personally, in every realm you can imagine. So, you know, the stereotypes around what you think when you see a Black woman in certain settings is definitely one that I would love to see eradicated.
Well, thank you. Well, I know we're at time. Thank you, Danai. Thank you to the Unstereotype Alliance. And we look forward to hearing the new campaign.
So thank you.